Good morning, gamers. In this week's episode of Will It Run, we'll have a look at Sons of the Forest, the sequel to the hit survival crafting game, The Forest. As always, we'll be putting the game through its paces on the most common hardware setup as per the Steam Hardware Survey. Our goal is to see if we can get the game running at a smooth and playable 60 frames per second. Links for the hardware and the Steam Hardware Survey down in the description below. I have made it my mission to test newly released games on the most typical PC hardware setups to make sure that developers aren't skipping out on optimization. On that note, did you know that more than 35% of PC gamers are running either a 10 series or a 16 series Nvidia graphics card? Those graphics cards are over 6 years old and 4 years old respectively. And I feel as a developer it would be foolish to ignore such a massive segment in the marketplace. So with that out of the way, let's dive in and do what most tech YouTubers don't and put this game through its paces on the most average gaming PC out there. And let's see what's scarier, the game or how well it's optimized. Let's get into it. One final note before we jump into the nuts and bolts of today's video. Your feedback is greatly appreciated, so if there's any games you would like to see or any other content you think would be a good fit for the channel, please sound off in the comments below. Jumping across to the graphics menu, it's pretty standard stuff here with ultra, high, medium, low, and ultra low presets. As the game is developed in Unity, it also has a lot of other settings to choose from, but don't worry, you can change any of these to test, and if it doesn't work out, you can revert to one of those presets. We're going to be ambitious though and choose high to begin with because I have high hopes that this game will run well on our system. Now that we are past the loading screen and into the opening cutscene, I can instantly see that my ambitions were well outside the realm of possibility. Even without logging any stats, I can straight away tell that the game will not run well on our system using the high preset. But hey, who can blame a man for trying? And since I don't want to spoil any of the story for those of you who want to experience those things for yourself, let's just jump ahead to some gameplay and test this sucker out. And as I suspected, the high preset is a bridge too far for our little system, with the game stuttering along at a paltry 48 frames per second average, with lows dropping to 26 frames and 13 frames respectively. And we haven't even gotten into any combat encounters yet, but the game has given me this lovely grenade, which I am eternally grateful for. It means I can go out with a bang. Dad jokes aside, let's drop down to medium settings and see how the game behaves. We managed to make our way down out of the snow into a heavily forested area of, well, forest. But I had yet to run into any of these so-called suns yet. Let's hope it stays that way though, because I heard they have a tendency to ruin dinner parties. But I can tell you one thing that was getting ruined, and that was our frame rate. Even on medium settings in this wooded area, we were only seeing an average of 50 frames per second, up from 48 on high. But one nice thing was that our 1% lows had improved a fair bit to 21 frames per second. This is important because a lot of the stuttering that you'll see in video games is not actually due to the constant frame rate. It's how low those 1% and those 1% lows drop down to when you get action on the screen and moments of combat and things flying around everywhere. So keep an eye on those 0.1% lows and those 1% lows, because that's what really matters. That's what makes a game feel smooth when you're playing it. And terrifyingly, while I was saying that, some sort of man-like critter started scurrying around the bushes near me, and let me tell you, as someone who had played The Forest before and was very frightened of all the cannibals chasing me around the island, this was a moment of concern. But this isn't a video about me hiding from cannibals and running around in circles. This is a video about how the game performs. So now we're going to drop it down to low settings and see if we can't actually get ourselves into some combat to see how the game will perform. I'm hoping that the loss of visual fidelity isn't too much, considering now that we've tried high settings and medium settings, and so far that 60 frames per second has eluded us. I'm hoping that we're not having to drop down to very low settings, because this game really is quite visually appealing, and it would be a real shame if we couldn't at least retain some of that visual eye candy with this system. Now, during that combat sequence, even on the low graphic preset, we did see our 0.1% lows drop down to 4 frames per second. Now, that's a little bit disappointing because in a game like this where the enemies move fast and you're trying to hit them and you might be using a bow and arrow, it can affect your aim, it can affect your positional awareness as to where the creatures are on the screen at any given time. Pleasingly though, we did start to see our average creep up above 50 frames per second, and our frame rate was starting to hit that 60 frames per second limit a lot more frequently. So while it wasn't perfect, it is playable on the low graphic preset. We're going to have to drop to ultra low and see whether or not we can get that smooth gameplay experience that we're looking for. Instantly, I felt a massive difference in how the game felt on screen, and this was reflected in the stats. Unfortunately though, this came with a big hit to our visuals with a lot less eye candy on screen, which is a real shame as this game on the higher settings is a real visual treat. This game though is still in early access, so there's hope that we see more optimization as the development progresses. On ultra low, we started to see a real improvement in our 0.1 and 1% lows at 24 frames and 27 frames respectively. This is great because even though we weren't quite hitting that 60 FPS average, we only saw 54 at best, it still really makes this experience smoother overall. Up on screen, we have our frame rate comparison graph, and as you can see, the high settings really isn't worth your time unless you aren't very sensitive to changes in frames per second on the screen. For those of you who are though, I would recommend sticking with the low or ultra low settings on older hardware. In saying that though, it is worth your time to have a play around with the settings and see where you can get some gains in regards to visual quality without sacrificing your gameplay too much. Remember, you can't break anything. If you make a mistake, just select one of the presets and everything should be okay and back to normal. So there you have it, Sons of the Forest tested on our average gaming PC. Honestly, I was hoping this one would have performed a little better, but hopefully the devs spend a little bit more time on optimization during the early access period. I hope you enjoyed the video, and remember, if there's anything you'd like to see from the channel, don't forget to sound off in the comments below. Oh, and like and subscribe. See you next week. Thanks guys, bye.